Good morning, everyone. I feel like the first cup of coffee might be fading, so can we bring the energy up? Can we get some claps going here? There we go. A great event. Super excited to be here and super excited for this panel. I'm Kyle Heggie. I'm the Chief of Staff to our COO here at Morning Brew, and I'm really excited to be chatting with Matt, Head of Product Marketing at Mountain, and Adri, the CMO of Iterable, on a topic maybe you all have been thinking about lately. It's called artificial intelligence, AI. It's been in the news, maybe a little bit recently. And so we've brought on two really fantastic experts to talk about AI, and we want to get very tactical. How can you as a marketer think about bringing AI internally to your teams? How can you build it into products? And we'll hear about how they're helping their clients use AI to drive really great results. So Matt, Adri, great to have you here. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having us.
So I'll start with a really hard-hitting question, which is some background information. So set the scene, your role at the company, what your company does, how you're helping clients, and maybe Matt, we'll start with you.
So my background is pretty varied. One of my very first jobs out of college was I was selling new and used cars for what was then a Saturn car dealership. I bounced from that into video game console marketing. Console game marketing. I did developer marketing, mobile marketing before landing in ad tech about 9 years ago. And so I've had a very kind of bouncy career, but I would say the one thing that's been consistent through all that was a product marketing love. And I've been fortunate to be able to do that ever since. So Mountain is a self-serve connected television advertising platform that's built for performance marketers. 90% of our customers have never been on TV before. And they come to us for the same reason that they would be using paid search or social to drive a performance outcome.
Adri.
I have to test this. Okay. All right. So I'm using this because otherwise it was going to ruin my outfit. So
you can't mess up. You can't mess up.
Can't
the fit.
do that.
Yeah.
Can't do that. Okay. So it's all working great. Well, I'm Adriana. I go by Adri. So I'm now been in marketing for 25 years, which makes me like the oldest ever, but also an expert in downturns and new technology, because I've built my career based on every new technology that has come up in the market and has changed essentially how do we communicate and how we relate with each other. I spent the first 10 years of my career in digital marketing. I was at Digitas for those my friends over there, and then I went to American Express, and I was part of the team that digitized a lot of the processes, communications, and did a lot of great stuff in this amazing brand. And then I moved to the West Coast, and I moved into brand and community and to PR. Worked at Weber Shandwick, so I've been in-house and agency bouncing back and forth. And then I ended up in Tableau for a long time, so any Tableau fans? Yay!
There we go.
Great brand, so I hit it there, the community team, the brand team, the events team, lots of different roles, PR and comms. And what's interesting, and now I'm in my third chapter of my career, which is as a CMO, and really it's been all about, for me, data and stories. That's what it all boils down to. And I still feel like having, sort of like the humanist eye with the rigor and like the analytics of data is really like combining those two skills is really what's propelled and defined my career. And I have this amazing role at Iterable. Iterable is AI power, you can drink, AI power communications, a platform. And really what we help brands is like, how do you connect, how do you activate data to connect and engage customers in the channels that people live? Like think about like 90% of the interactions that you have with any brand that you consume, including like Morning Brew, which is a customer, are through digital channels, right? So if you treat each one of those moments of interactions as a way to matter, as a brand moment, as a moment to tell your story, how do you do that in a personalized way, in a dynamic way, in a harmonized way, so when you go to the website, when you go to the email, when you have your text, like it all feels part of that. Well, that's all power. That's the technology behind Iterable that helps brands like Morning Brew to do that. So I have this amazing role. I get to work with lots of brands, 1,200 around the world, and learn about every marketer, like your roles, your challenges, your opportunities is like a really amazing opportunity to be out there.
Yeah, I love it, and it's a great way to set the scene for this conversation, and very dynamic careers. I did not have used cars salesman on the bingo card, so that's very fun.
Unconventional.
I want to start with like a sense of where you're seeing the marketer in 2024, like their relationship with AI. Not to age myself, but I feel like when you had to do relationship status on Facebook, we would all be like, it's complicated with AI right now. Like, do we love it? Do we not like it? So when you're talking to marketers, do you see more fear or do you see optimism? And then also, are you seeing a lot more experimentation, or are you actually seeing implementation of a ton of tools with your clients? And we'll start with you, Adri.
Well, grad school, we were talking about philosophy before.
Yeah.
So anybody familiar with Moore's law, like the distribution, crossing the chasm? Come on, we're a room full of marketers. It's like, come on. So I think it's, yes, all of those. Like we see a distribution of people. You have people that are very afraid, people are experimenting, like early adopters that are like out there, like they're like, I've automated my entire life, which is all great. The thing that's different that I've seen is like the speed of where things are moving. And again, I've been in a lot of new technologies, cloud, e-commerce, like email, like all these things that have changed the way that essentially we interact with the world around us. And this one is going faster than anything else. I'll give you an example. About a year and a half ago, we had our customer conference, and of course we were talking about AI, and the dominant narrative was like, I don't know, this seems like a toy, it's kind of like, I'm afraid it's gonna, the robots are gonna take over, blah, blah, like that. Like 6 months later, we did a survey, 1,500 marketers, and we found out 91% of marketers were using AI in their jobs in some way. Like, I was like, what? 6 months later. 6 months later after, we had our annual conference, and of course we were talking AI again, and the dominant narrative was about compliance and regulation. Many brands having, like AI governance. And so you quickly went from fear to full adoption to, hey, we gotta like manage this thing, right? And so, I mean, in a span of a year.
Yep.
And I think what we're dealing with right now, like reality, what I hear about like the fear, the dominant narrative, like is like, what's the real value of it, right? Like, what's the ROI? What is it actually solving a problem? So we're past all that, and we're trying to like balance out. So that's what I would say. Like, yeah, you still have the full spectrum of adoption and different attitudes, but the speed of what that's changing is like nothing I've ever seen.
And Matt, are you seeing a similar thing?
For me, I think that the great epiphany, both as a practitioner, but also as one who's seeing marketers go through this journey on their own, I think a lot of us have figured out that we are more comfortable and better editors than we are first draft creators. And whether it's procrastination that gets in the way of you getting that first step forward in creating something, or writer's block, or whatever the case may be, I think a lot of us have figured out that having I'll call it a co-pilot, no reference to the Microsoft, literally right across the street. But having a draft maker to kick off ideas and to iterate, give you something to start from, it may be lousy, but a lot of us do better coming over the top and looking at that and going, well, how can I improve it? It's that taking that first step for many of us, myself included, can be the hardest thing. And so where maybe in the beginning there was some trepidation because, boy, the tool seemed intelligent. Now, it's, you know what, I can weave this into my workflow. I can trust some of what I'm getting, and as long as I have the control to make it better, I can see a path to being useful.
Yeah.
I have a comment on that. It's interesting you say, like, the first draft. I agree. But I also have found that, for example, my interaction with computers, and I think everybody's really changing, because if you think about it, we were, most of us, when you interact with computer, you're used to having like something that's executing your idea, right? Like, and if any of you had to, like, we learned SQL or whatever, like any kind of like programming language, like you have to be very specific of what you want, and the computer then just goes and execute your command. I think with the Gen AI and LLM, it's more of that relationship. And so, like, I've recently learned, also because of my mother, that's a whole nother story. But anyway, my mother's like, hey, have you actually worked with, ChatGPT to help you edit stuff. And I did a whole thing around it helping me critique my writing. And so what I'm learning is there is a change of how we're interacting with computers, where it's much more of that, advisor assisted, or like you have like your best intern ever, where it's bidirectional. It's not just executing what I want, but it's the back and forth, like you're saying, like, you start the draft, but it doesn't end there, because you need to like continually teach this thing so that it's better for you. So I think like there is a paradigm. I mean, like there's a study, for example, that came out that if you tell it, like if you prompt with emotions, like if you tell it, this is really important for me, or this is very valuable, or, I want to express, happiness with this. The computer interprets those, like the LLM interprets those, like they said, like there's like 15% improvement in the output, better than like a typical command. I'm like, I would never talk to computers with emotions ever in my life. So I do think that there's a fundamental change of our relationship with how we're working with this, that we're just at the beginning to try to really understand that. And so, but it is fascinating about like, is it the writer's block? But what happens after that first?
Yeah, right. And it doesn't have to be like a one and done, like a very quick game of tennis. You're absolutely right that you can take this information back and then iterate on it and then hand it back over and continue to improve. And I mean, certainly in our own tech, we see marketers doing this.
Yeah, definitely iterate. Because iterable. Iterable.
You're welcome.
A nice plug there.
Thanks, brand team.
Andrew, you had mentioned your mom. I literally have gotten a text from my mom being like, I'm using ChatGPT and like I'm trying to figure it out. And once my mom was not in tech was using it, I was like, okay, it's here. And we're just figuring out how to really iterate and improve on this technology. And that can be sometimes challenging. And Andrew, I know you had a really interesting story about how you got your team into the right mindset on like getting comfortable using these tools. And I think it can be really valuable for the marketers in the audience. You have all of these tools. How do you get your actual team comfortable using them? And you did some sort of like competition, and then Matt, I'd love to hear what you're doing internally as well.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, look, as an AI tool, we have to walk the walk, right? So it's like very easy, to kind of come in and really it'd be like, hey, we got to do this, guys. Like, but even if you are like your product, you still have to get over the fear that first, like, so how do you do it? And I will say, like, by the way, my mom was a CIO, and so she is in tech, so I usually don't have to explain to my mother what I do. She tells me what I do, so that's a whole, but anyway, I'm a special mom. Anyway, so what we do? Actually, it wasn't my idea, but the team came up with this idea of doing an internal competition. We wanted to try out ChatGPT, and we wanted to do a test. So we call it high volume ad test. So what we do is that everybody in the marketing team created ads, and we didn't select them. We ran all of them, hundreds. We put them in the market. Whoever had the best performing ad was going to win a prize. Guess what? That was not a person from our copy or brand team. That did not. It was like somebody else in our demand gen team. Anyway, so we ran the whole thing. We very quickly, basically, A/B tested over. I think it was like close to 300 different ads that all came in the same place. And the interesting thing is that we double our demo requests, which in B2B, is like our main like call to action or main like hot lead. That's like the most prime leads that we have in the time that we've had our average. And we also our pipeline increased quite a bit just from running that. So what happened, right? Like we created excitement. Everybody got to use it in an applied way. We got like more than anything else. And so to me, that was like such a great moment to get like the team behind this and see like the real power, and everybody like learned stuff, and it was super fun. So I recommend it. It was like running a good experiment.
I love this idea of like gamification and competition. Matt, have you done anything internally to help your team get a better mindset around these AI
Well,
tools?
our hand was forced a bit because in late June, early July, we launched a AI-powered keyword-based audience builder for television. The context here is that with 90% of our advertisers never having done television, they oftentimes would come into the platform and try to build a TV audience, and they would stumble. They didn't understand the taxonomy and the language that was used to build audiences in television compared to what they were doing in search and social, especially search, where it's keyword based. So we have spent the better part of the last year building a keyword system to build an audience. And so now AI evaluates your website, describes what it does, what your website does, what you offer, what products you offer, and then gives the marketer the chance to come over the top and edit. And it's worked out really well for customers, especially those who are new to TV, who might have niche products, who cannot waste an impression on TV. But what we're getting are very reasonable questions from practitioners, from marketers who are saying, well, what should my strategy be for Q4? And how do I weave in holiday themes into a keyword strategy? And we're like, oh, that's a really good question. We hadn't thought of that. So our team has taken it upon itself to map out what does that strategy look like? What's the relationship of what the AI and the platform is giving, and how should marketers be responding? And how should they be sort of bringing the same sort of test and iterate TM for you approach to it, but make it continuous and learning, but right now very practical, because everybody who's especially in a consumer business has to have Q4 very much on their minds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think a theme that I've heard from you, Matt, is like this human in the loop, and we'll hear this all the time. Like, you let the AI do a lot of maybe the initial draft, but there's always someone coming over the top that is fixing it on the margins and improving it, and I think that's a really important lesson for the audience.
Yeah, you definitely, I will say, like, well, at Iterable, we have a concept of glass box AI, right? Like, the biggest issue with AI we have is that you don't trust it, and you don't understand why is it making decisions, right? Like, we have for example, a predictive model, AI predictive model that you can choose, like, any type of conversion, like whether it's a purchase or a subscription or an upgrade, or I'm gonna watch a video, like whatever combination of like conversion or goal you decide, and it generates a predictive model where that and gives you like the full audience. Cool, but a lot of tools do that, but we don't understand it, so how do we trust it? Which is why, we'd like to work with like data scientists, because you can like sit down a human and be like, walk me how you did this, right? Like, I need to understand like what are the variables and all this stuff. Well, I mean, the idea of like, if you build it in the solution to have, explainability and actually show you the variables, so like at the end of the day, the marketer needs to be in the driver's seat. It is the same concept of like Tesla and autopilot. It's like, at any point you have to have the ability to override and also understand where it's coming, So like that, I think it's a fundamental principle of AI for sure.
I want to talk about bringing your tools, your product features to the market, because we're talking about AI. The panel before us was talking about AI. You go on LinkedIn and every other post is about AI. There's so much noise that like any company that's like, we use AI to drive efficiencies and power results, I'm a little skeptical, because it feels like it's very easy to say. It might be actually harder to do on the back end. So when you're talking to prospective clients, how excited are they about AI? How do you frame up your product features and how they leverage AI to get them on board and excited to use Iterable or to use Mountain?
I feel like the product marketer should.
Yeah, I mean, I think I start with the notion of what's on the customer's minds, and I think they tend to, first of all, all of us, customers of any particular product or service, are much better at being able to point out problems with it than we are. It would be better if I had X, Y, or Z, right? The famous Henry Ford quote, who said, if I listened to customers, I would have tried to make a faster horse. And so I go about this thinking about what are the problems. And in the world of paid media, a problem for years, anyone who's especially done TV knows this pain of submitting a plan, sometimes by fax or email, and then waiting 2 weeks to get it back, and then like making a change, and then sending it off and getting it back 2 weeks later, and then finally saying, okay, it's fine, it's ready to go, hitting launch, it runs, and then you want to find out how did it do, and then someone says, we'll get back to you in 8 weeks. and like that's agony. Yeah. And so our view, and it's not unique, is how can we solve a problem? And one of the big problems and it's not just in media, but in all tasks marketers have, is that there are certain things that we have to do that I would describe as drudgery. that are just take time. And AI has shown itself to be awfully proficient at being able to knock out and accelerate through a lot of things that we would call drudgery. Now, what marketers also told us was, look, I need to have edit control. I need to know what it's doing. To your point, Audrey, like it wanted to know, show me your math, show me your work. And then to be able to come over the top and say, yeah, I think I want to make these changes. So giving the marketer a pivotal role in being able to determine how AI functions and the effect that it has for me sort of been the big insight, and pairing it with how do we go back to the core of being a marketer is how do we solve problems?
I agree, like, and we do the same. I would say, like, we do it in two levels. Like, one, we talk about like specific problems, because the thing is, like, specificity is like, yeah, of course it's going to make you more productive. Like, that's the whole point of technology, like, to help you. Like, any technology ever is going to make you happier, richer, better looking, and more productive.
Better
that's
looking.
Like the value prop of all of technology. So the difference is like what specific problem you're solving. And like, I'll give you an example for us. Like, we just launched this feature like four weeks ago. It's called Journey Assist. And what it is that it's a generative AI LLM that with a simple prompt, like just like you do in ChatGPT, you can generate a journey. How many of you have tried to like build a journey, like a welcome or an abandoned cart journey? Like, that's very tedious, especially if you have cross-channel and you have like all this stuff. Well, I mean, great, you gotta use it. And so then we have like a customer like Nextdoor that that tried it out, they love it, and what they said is like, great, it not only saves me time, it actually helps me think differently. So to me, it's all about like, let's not focus on like the greatness of it. Let's think about, like the abstract of it. Let's like help solve a problem, a practical, concrete problem with real value. And from there, marketers are smart. They're going to add, like, they're going to bring in the bigger layer. So that's one thing I talk about. But the second thing that we really talk about is like, how is this going to change your job? So again, it's not the technology. It's like, what is the role of the marketing in the future? Like, I think everyone's going to end up being the brand marketer, by the way. How many, I asked a lot of CMOs, that I work with, like, have you made any organizational changes to accommodate marketing? Like, how many of you have LLM or AI trainers in your organization? Can I see a show of hands? Okay, 1, 2, 3.
Few hands.
These are like the most modern marketers in the world. But very, very few. It's like we're very little. So I do think, like, to me, one of the big things that we do, at Irritable, like, there's two big pillars, is like the technology and the people. And so those are the two things of how, like, essentially a position our AI technology is like. You got to understand the technology to solve a concrete problem, and you got to understand and you got to work with about how is it going to change the people, right?
And Adri, you said something I think that's maybe provocative, like a hot take, which was you think everyone might eventually become a brand marketer. And it's a perfect segue into something I wanted to get your thoughts on, which is what does brand actually mean in the age of AI? Because I think even with AI now, there's like a feeling of like it's synthetic. And it doesn't always feel like this is from a brand. It feels like it's from this other company. It's from OpenAI, and the brand is using it. So how do you think about using AI in conjunction with, you still need to have a very strong brand that feels differentiated from other companies out there that might be using the same AI tools as you?
Do you want to?
I'll say that I think this is a problem that goes beyond AI. Remember during COVID advertising? In these tough times, ... I mean, like those.
We're all in it together.
We're all in, yeah, that's another one. Like that ad was everybody, and it became a meme. Or there was a time when someone cleverly thought you could take a 3-word sentence, but then put a period after every word in the sentence, or every word. So it would, we.love.marketing.crew, and period. And like, so we're all of us in marketing susceptible to groupthink. And whether you're using AI or you're just consider yourself a savvy marketer and you love looking at ad ages, updates of the latest ads, I think we really got to work hard to separate. And again, AI can be a very helpful tool. I mean, you can, to your point, Audrey, you can give it a very emotional prompt and say something like, surprise me, give me something very, that will be unlike anything I've expected. And it may not be, probably won't be great, but it will maybe get you thinking about the next great thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I told you right about my career, like two chapters, and I think it's the thing about really blurring the disciplines of marketing. I mean, when I was in, like, what really I think made me successful in digital marketing was because I had a background in journalism and writing and storytelling. And so to me, like, literally my first job was like new media analyst, like, because the internet was new media then. And I saw data, and to me this was a proxy for human behavior. And so I saw not just a spreadsheet, but a story to tell and a pitch and like the things. And so, it's bringing that cross-discipline brain. And the same happened when I moved to brand and PR. Like anytime, like I had never written a press release. I had no idea. And Weber Shandwick were just looking for people that had like technology background. And so no one in like brand and PR knows what a data or analysis or an ROI or like they're like, what do you mean I have to justify these dollars? And so like that I think it's like, the crossbreed, but if you think about it, like, sure, AI generates stuff, but if you don't bring that like true value of what your voice, what your brand stands for, to your point, it's like it's very easy to just be everybody else. It takes a lot of boldness to stand for something. And the more, I mean, think about it, like now we can create a video in like 5 seconds. Every one of us, you can create it, I can create it, like you can create it. And so like the noise that we're creating in the world as marketer is like infinite now. So the only way that we're going to stand out, the only way is to have something interesting to say, is to stand for something. So if you are an email marketer or a marketing operations person or you're building your website, it's not sufficient anymore like, oh, I can put this like great, like WordPress, I'm like a super like WordPress, user or whatever, or like, yeah, I'm like a super MVP iterable user. If you're not bringing that voice of your brand into every single interaction you have, then like honestly, you're just doing the same, like you're just going to become irrelevant. Like your brand is going to become irrelevant. Yeah. So that's why I think like everybody should think like a brand marketer. Everybody should cultivate and understand what does your brand stand for, what are the values, what's the personality. We were talking about like one of my favorite exercises, like what celebrity are you like? Like truly, like be a storyteller, like become that. Because that is that's why they say like the hottest like programming language is English. So like that's where I think like the sort of like, so if you were like me and studied liberal arts or some other super useful diploma like like my father used to call it, mass communication or mass vacation, that's what he called it. Like you're very hot right now.
Yeah, I think this is a perfect way to wrap this up, which is I think there's maybe a fear, some people have a fear that AI will replace a bunch of jobs or it'll dilute, but in some ways the marketer's role maybe is more important now than ever to stay on message, be very clear about the values of your company, make sure you have a differentiated voice in the marketplace. And if people were wondering what celebrity Iterable was, it was Paul Rudd. So that's their celebrity voice. Unfortunately, we're at time, but I could speak to you two for hours, and please find them after. They're incredibly sharp, really nice people. But can we give it up for Matt and Adri for this wonderful session? Thank you all.